right hand, left hand, and I don't think he's going to get up. I think it's all over. I think it's over. Is he going to get up? Can he get up? Can he get up? He does. Oh my goodness. Somehow Fury has managed to get up.
If you haven't already, please also subscribe to us on Apple, Spreaker and Spotify. Just type in Brawl Boxing and you'll find us there. Thank you.
I just want to start by giving a shout out to our amazing sponsor, CBD Uplift. They provide the best CBD products on the market, including oil, gummies and capsules. I've actually tried the products myself and I can genuinely say they're the best CBD I've ever had, especially the gummies. I'd seriously recommend anyone. If you use our discount code BRAWL20, you'll get 20% off and free shipping. So thanks a million, lads. Violent Gentleman, the newest and fastest growing boxing-inspired training/casual wear brand established in Northern Ireland. Violent inside the ropes, a gentleman outside of them. Behave accordingly. Check out their website, www.violentgent20.com, and all of their socials. Facebook, ViolentGent20, Twitter, ViolentGent20, and Insta, ViolentGentleman20. Thank you. Hello, folks, and welcome back to the Brawl Boxing Podcast. I'm Kieran McCourt, and I'm joined by co-hosts Colin McGuigan and Ram McLaughlin.
So, guys, as some of you may know already, we run a special every few months. This one's actually a bit more special than normal because it's our 50th episode. So we've been torturing, Rand's actually been torturing me to get this guest. So finally I got him on. So we're delighted to welcome former Liverpool and Real Madrid footballer Steve McManaman. Steve, how are you doing, mate?
I'm good, boys. Nice to see you all. Nice to see you.
Can't be, it's football legend, not footballer. Come on here. Let's get a proper greeting in.
If I was a Liverpool fan, I might have said it.
Football is all right for me, mate. You know that. Things like that.
No, before we obviously get into it, Steve, I want to know, how have you maintained that incredible hair? All this, look at mine. Look what I've been stuck with. You know what I mean? Like
you look like David Beckham, mate.
Yes. Wait, that's getting clipped and put into our fucking podcast. That's clip for the clip for Instagram.
I'm joking. Beck's will be crying his eyes out.
I think that's why we hit it off when we first met, because obviously you were used to Becks at Madrid and just thought Becks in the academy.
Your cultured right foot was just as good as his, mate, wasn't it?
But no, that actually is a great barnet, though. You're being humble here. You're like,
listen, mate, he'll go in the end, so don't worry about it. Don't worry.
You're sitting there like Bradley Cooper.
It's just life, isn't it? You know what I mean? I'm just lucky, that's all. But if you see me father, you know it's going to come soon enough, so don't worry.
So, Steve, talk to us about growing up in Liverpool. Did you know from a young age that you wanted to be a footballer?
Yes, mate. Yes. I was like most people. I lived in a very working class part of Liverpool called Kirkdale, and most people wanted to be footballers. It was as simple as that, and I think that goes for most working class places all around the country. Whether you're from Birmingham, Newcastle, places in London, of course, everybody wants to grow up and be a footballer. We were obsessed with the likes of Liverpool and Everton back in those days. They were very successful clubs. Everything revolved around the weekend about watching Liverpool or Everton, or whether your father played football or mine played football at a very good semi-professional level back in those days because of advantages, whether they could get into the mainstream football clubs. And my life revolved around going to school, and over a weekend I'd go and watch my father and all his mates play. I'd be in the dressing rooms with them. After the games, we'd all go back to the pub. As a young kid, I just thought it was the greatest life ever, sitting with your dad and all his mates. They watch the football of an afternoon. They get the football newspapers on a Saturday evening. They talk to each other. They're swearing, they're this and that. And as a young kid, I was just open-mouthed, just looking at it. I absolutely adored my father, you see. And then we did that on a Sunday, and I followed him wherever I could. I was very, very passionate about football before I could even play it, really. But of course, I always wanted to be, a footballer.
Did you ever join in the training sessions when you were a bit older?
Yes, I mean, Ryan, where you'd play on the local park, the rec we used to call it, there'd be games there and anybody could play. So there'd be games on a Sunday for 3-4 hours, and it wasn't 11 against 11, it was 20 versus 19. You just walked past and you joined in. So whether you were 8 or whether you were 18, there was always people joining in and playing for 20 minutes and then having to go somewhere else. So I always knew that from the age of 6, 7, 8, 9, I was better than the people at my age, and I was always playing against people above me. So you can always test yourself out, and you always knew that actually, you're still a long way. When I was young, I was tiny. I'm tall now, but if you saw me at 12, 13, 14, although my ability was excellent, it was always a case of, am I going to grow? Is he going to grow? Because he's too thin and too small at the moment to become a professional footballer. So I always knew I was good enough with the ball. But at that age, it was always a case of, will he grow into the man that, hopefully you will be.
Mm-hmm. 3 or 4 hour games, that's mental. No wonder you could run all day when you were a pro. Sports scientists be turning their hair out. Heard that?
I know. Well, that was just, that again, mate, that's just, I think it's just genetics.
Yeah.
You start cross country running in school, and you're all set off, 30 kids at once. And you don't know how good you are, do you? Until you go past 200 meters, especially at 9 and 8, 9 and 10, 300 meters, and then 400 meters, and you're still going, and you look behind, and you're way ahead. So that was just pure luck, really, and genetics from my father and my mother. And that's why I was a very good cross country runner at that age.
Did it keep you off the streets? Obviously growing up around that time, there's a lot of temptation. Sort of your mates probably starting to drink and stuff and getting up to all sorts.
No, it kept me focused, Kieran, to be honest, because on a Saturday I knew I had to play, but I'd still enjoy myself with my mates and get up to stupid things, climbing over here and into old bombed out houses and stuff, and walking on roofs and doing stupid things like that, of course. But once we got to 15 and 14, 15, 16, of course, as you rightly said, some of your mates are then veering towards going to the off license and trying to have a drink on a Friday. That was never in my locker. I'd be with them and I'd be having a laugh and a joke with them, and there'd be a big group of us. But I've got a game tomorrow, I have to prepare for the game, and I'd always shy away from that. And then, of course, the group of 20, when you leave school and things start to venture off into, some of the lads ventured off into different aspects, then you have to break away from a lot of them, in general, because there's certain things you just can't get up to at all. And then, the mates I had, when I was 14, 15, even earlier, 12, 11, 8, 9 at school, they're still me pals now, and we still meet up and go and have a drink together now. So, but I still know, hundreds of lads from the Kirkdale area.
They're still climbing roofs, are they?
They're doing much more dangerous things than that, mate.
Whenever you were a kid, Steve, you grew up an Everton fan, I think I'm right in saying.
Yes.
So your first contract was a Liverpool contract, and I believe, I don't know, you can correct me if I'm wrong, I think your dad might have convinced you at the time not to sign with Everton because they offered you as well, didn't they?
Yeah, I was very lucky, Colm, to be honest, because I was at 14, a lot of teams up and down the country wanted me. I was never going to leave Liverpool, the city of Liverpool, because I was too much of a home bird. I would have cried my eyes out if I would have had to leave, the house at that age. So it was always going to be between Everton and Liverpool. I was a big Everton fan and I wanted to sign for Everton. People know that. And when I went to see Everton, they give the customary talk about, oh, you're a great player, and we want you to come and join us and blah, 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 which was really nice. And then I went to see Liverpool, and Liverpool, just blew me out the water with what they want. I mean, at 14, most of the time it's a load of nonsense, really. You can say anything at 14. We're going to do this. We're going to make you there. We want to bring you into the first team, because, of course, anything could happen between 14 and getting into the first team. It's just that they gave me the right spiel, and suddenly I was led into an office, and I was led into Kenny Dalglish's office, who was, player manager at the time, but as we all know, the most incredible footballer. He sat me down. He knew a lot about me. He knew a lot about my father. He told me the right things. We want me to do this. We want you to do that. We find you a great player. And then he just played in there. I think it was the Intercontinental Cup over in Tokyo. I think they lost to Flamenco at the time. And he had a pair of these boots, Puma boots, on the floor. And they were like a pair of Puma boots I've never seen before. Back in the day, it was black with a white stripe. These were all fancy and white here and a little bit of black there and a little bit of gold. And I went, wow, they're quite cool. He said, take them, have them. No, I was like a size, I didn't even know, size 4. And these boots were like a size 7. He just went, take them, don't worry, have them. And then we said our goodbyes and everything. And then as we left, you know, my dad said, wow, you know, that was, you know, something special. That. And, you know, I think looking at the two teams and what they've both said to you, you know, it makes perfect sense to sign for Liverpool. And it was, you know, back then, you know, and years later, they did the same with Robbie Fowler, of course, with Jamie Carragher, with, you know, Michael Owens and things like that. And everybody gravitated towards Liverpool. So it shows you that they must have been doing something right. And, you know, subsequently, if you speak to any of the Man United lads, you know, even at young ages, Sir Alex got involved. You know, if they needed a kid, if they wanted a kid, they rolled out the big guns. And if Sir Alex went to see the parents, you know, that was the end of it. And I think, you know, in 84, 85, you know, Kenny Dalglish was exactly the same at Liverpool.
Do you think it's still the same at clubs like Liverpool and United now for like the likes of Ole Gunnar Solskjaer or Jurgen Klopp to go and speak to these kids? Do you think it'd have the same effect, or was it different then?
I think it'd have the same effect if they did do it. I probably think it's too far removed now from that.
Yeah.
You know, Ryan will tell you there's so many levels now from Jurgen down to that academy level, and then, you know, they go down to the, you know, young as 8 and 7 and things like that. You know, that didn't exist when I was playing. So I think it'd be very much harder for Jurgen, with everything he has to contend with, to speak to those type of parents. But I think if there was a 14, 15, 16-year-olds that you were trying to bring in, you know, a quick message from Jurgen Klopp wouldn't go astray, would it? You know, it's not an hour conversation. It could just be a minute phone call or something like that. If it's to seal a deal when you know there's 4 or 5 big clubs after them, you know, I don't think that's wrong to do in this day and age.
I think kids, especially now, they don't think they'll meet the first team manager a lot of the time until they actually train with them. And I think maybe Raheem Sterling would have obviously had that treatment at Liverpool, where he obviously when he signed, he was 15. He's probably more developed and a lot older than you were. But I don't think it happens anywhere near as often as it used to.
I think if you see Cade, who's just played for the first team last week against Norwich and did very well, I wouldn't have thought that Jurgen had met him. You know, I don't know actually, but I wonder whether Jurgen had met him prior to him signing, because of course he was a very talented boy anyway, wasn't he, when he came from Derby? Likewise, Harvey Elliott when he came from Fulham. I don't know whether the manager had any say in that whatsoever. So it probably is a little bit different now. There's far more on the manager's plate, isn't he, than there probably was, you know, 20 years ago.
Fast forward a bit here, Steve. You obviously made your debut in Kenny's his last season of manager in his first tenure.
Yes, it would have been his last 12 months, mate. Yeah, I made it in the season, sort of the season before he resigned, if that makes sense.
Yeah. What was that whole feeling like? Because obviously you're an Everton fan, and like that sort of went away by the time you'd made your debut. Were you? Yeah,
because I played against, you know, I played against Everton in the like the B team, the A team, the reserves. When you played Everton in the reserves, Ryan, it was crazy. If you didn't play on the Saturday for the first team, you were in the reserves. You know, there was no other kids play that. Sorry, let me get rid of this. Right. There was no the kids play. If you didn't play in the starting 11, you played in the reserves on a Wednesday. So the reserves was full of, you know, world-class players, you know, internationals playing. So you'd play against Everton, star names for Everton, and they'd kick lumps out of you. And there'd be 20,000, 30,000 people at Anfield or Goodison watching these games. So you quickly fall out of love, not out of love because of the team, because a lot of my mates still support Everton. And I know, you know, when I finished playing football, I knew a lot of the Everton managers. So I still like Everton to do well. But you don't even have that mindset now that I used to support Everton. You know, once you put on the Liverpool shirt and you get kicked a few times, you know that, you know, when you get abused off the crowds, you know that it's time to sort of, you know, forget all about that and get on with playing the game.
Obviously, I never really went near like the level that you played at. So, but for me, people don't realize when you're from. Obviously, when I supported a different team when I was back home, but when I went to
United,
no, I don't know what
massive United fan.
West Ham United, West Ham. But like people don't realize when you're in that bubble, you just get caught up, and it's like, I don't know. I just found like a real love for the city, a real love for the people, and then obviously at the academy, you know yourself as well. It's just great people. So you just sort of like get cemented into it, and it just takes over you. And it's like one of them ones where like it never leaves you either. So I'd still support Liverpool now, and I'm back at the academy now, so I can 100% obviously understand you. But see the whole setup of the reserves back then. Do you think that was a lot better compared to what it is now? Because I know you're doing obviously a lot of work in the academy at Liverpool.
I think the competition's a lot better. I think that under-23 league that it's called, I don't think it's non-existent, isn't it? For instance, you shouldn't be playing in there if you're 23 or 22, you shouldn't be playing in it for Liverpool. For instance, I get the 18, 19-year-olds play, but any older than that, the competition's not good enough. It's not strong enough. It doesn't help you if you get to want to get into certainly into Liverpool's first team. So I don't think it's strong enough. I think the reserves team back then was more. The difference between the 23s now and the first team is huge, absolutely huge. And the difference between the reserves and the first team when I played was very small, actually, because you were playing with first team players who always wanted to make an impression. So it was when you played for when you played in the reserve teams at 18, it was a real good standard. You were very close to making the first team. The 23s and the under 18s and the 23s suit the ground, but the under 23s used to be called the under 21s a couple of years ago, wasn't it? And they've suddenly had 23. So it shows you that the development league I think the under 23 league needs to be stronger, has to be stronger.
Mm.
When you were talking there about because we always slag around about being a United fan as well, and then switching to Liverpool, and you were talking, and I can understand it completely from the player's point of view. But what I was thinking there was like your parent, like was your dad and stuff an Everton fan, and like I'm sure a lot of your family, was it conflicting for them? Sort of when you.
Yes, my father was an Everton fan, still is. But when I played for Liverpool, he wanted me to win. It was as simple as that.
Yeah.
That thing about your son's playing, I want him to win every single game. Of course, it's not going to happen, but I want my son to do well. And then as soon as I stopped playing for Liverpool, he reverted back to being, an Everton fan. But if I was playing for Liverpool against Everton, he'd want his son to win first and foremost. Mm-hmm. And then as soon as I stopped playing and went to Real Madrid, he wanted Everton to win then. Mm-hmm. So, and likewise with my pals were the same. They're Everton fans, but they want you to win. And then, you'll go to the game and they'll come in the lounge and Everton have won. They'll give you a bit of stick. Liverpool have won. they'll have said well done because they, you're their mate and they'll stick up for you through thick and thin if any crazy fan says anything about you. Mm. But in the end, they want, if it comes down to who do you want to lift the trophy, that particularly now, the back being mad Everton fans again.
Yeah. You said there about any crazy fans. Have you any stories of like fans? Like we've seen that whole Eric Dyer thing the other year where he ran obviously a lot different. Have you any stories like that from your time playing?
You know what, Colm? Not really. I mean, I think if you speak to Robbie Fowler, he was a bit different. He was a different character to me. I was always quite quiet. I was always seen around Liverpool. I lived in it. I was playing for England and I was still living in Walton, which is a very working class area in Liverpool. So it wasn't a surprise to see me walking on the streets. I'd walk on the streets most days, go to the shops and have a walk around. So it's not like, you'd see Virgil van Dijk walking down the street. Now people are amazed. Or if you see Ronaldo walking down the street, I mean, you'd even be more amazed. Mm. It wasn't like that with me. Certainly when you live in Liverpool, I've always lived in Liverpool. I'd always lived in those areas. And I was playing for Liverpool. So not really. I must admit, Everton fans were always okay. I wasn't a Larry character when I went out and had a drink. I always kept myself to myself. So thankfully, I avoided all that. I avoided all that fame type. I was never into that mad clamour to be, crazy famous. I'm never have been. I mean, I'm not now. I'm quite low key and quite quiet really. So thankfully, touch wood, I didn't have any mad brushes with any fans.
What about in Madrid? Was it similar or different over there?
Oh, Madrid was different because you were treated like a king, to be honest, Kieran. If you played for Real Madrid and you were successful, I didn't pay for a drink, I didn't pay for a meal. It was just, it was very different. Even though Real Madrid and Atletico Madrid exist in the same city, Real Madrid we're up there and you were associated with up there, and Atletico, we're always our sort of our little noisy neighbours who were not successful. But when you played for Real and you were successful, as I said, you'd go to restaurants, you'd order food, I'd take 10 people, we'd have a great night, it'd be X amount of money at the end, which would be a big bill, and they'd just say no. The fact that you're here, and because if a Real Madrid player is in a restaurant, then generally the restaurants are packed. and they just say, no, we don't want any money. So you'd end up leaving a tip for the meal, because you don't want to leave and walk out without paying, because you want to go back to that restaurant and, you know, enjoy yourself. So you'd end up just leaving the price of the meal, you know, as a tip for everybody. But, you know, the lifestyle was incredible. I had the most amazing time there. You know, I was back there last week. I'm going back actually on Friday. You know, I get treated very well. I'm, you know, very fortunate. I get treated very well there.
You nearly signed for Barcelona, didn't you?
We're gonna get a wee city break, the Madrid this winter, if you fancy joining us.
Just let me know when you're there. I'll point you in the right direction.
Steve, I was going to
fly back to Liverpool.
Steve, I was going to say, you actually nearly signed for Barcelona, didn't you, at one point? Or was that a...
No, it was true. Well, I never nearly signed for them, but Liverpool accepted the bid from them and let me speak to them. But when I spoke to them, it was never going to happen. So it never got any further than a telephone conversation. But Liverpool actually, in '96, I think it was, Liverpool did accept a bid from them, which I wasn't particularly happy about at the time. But they did accept the bid, yes.
That's mad. See, when you were at Liverpool, Mac, who was your most influential manager you worked under? Like, who was like, see, when he became manager, who was it like you played your best football under, you loved your time the most there?
Well, I got on well with all the managers, Ryan, to be honest. I had, of course, Kenny. But always that was constant behind Kenny was Ronnie Moran and Roy Evans. Yeah. So you had this like trident of people. And then when Kenny went and Graham Souness came in, you always had Ronnie Moran and Roy Evans underneath them all the time. Suey didn't stay long. Transitional period, brought players in, got players out, got sacked, and then Evo came, and I always got on well with Evo. I always thought he was a really good manager, and he was just a little bit unlucky at times, you know, just losing games at the wrong time and things like that. But I thought he was excellent. He didn't get the credit he deserved, certainly off some ex-players, and then Gerrard came in, Gerrard Houllier, but he only came in for the last 8 months I was there. But he was great. My mother was really ill my last year at Liverpool. And of course, I was leaving as well. I was leaving Liverpool. And Gerrard was brilliant with me, you know, discussing things, let me have a bit of time off so I could spend time with my mother and things like that. So I got on very well with all the managers. I probably played my better football under Roy Evans because he was there the longest. And he was there when I was, you know, properly in the team. I was arguably the main man in the team. So he was my manager at the time. But, you know, Roy Evans, Ronnie Moran, and even Doug Livermore when he brought in, they were always constant right through the time I was there, I think. And that really helps.
Yeah, when you were at this time, so obviously the Liverpool period went on for years. Back then, it wasn't quite as common as it is now to sort of make the move, you know, the export over to, especially a team like Madrid for like an English player. Did you feel a certain sort of pressure? Especially a lot of Madrid fans don't necessarily take the people coming in who aren't from Spain or Madrid. Was there an extra pressure going over?
It was pressure because I was leaving. That was the hard part was in the, you know, the final year. My mother, as I said to you before, my mother was ill, and I decided to leave Liverpool, and my last game, I think, was on May the 17th. Forgive me if my dates mixed up. May the 17th, I think it was my last game for Liverpool at Anfield. And the lads give me like, you know, one of those like tunnels where to walk off and a standing ovation. And then my mother died like 36 hours later. So I sort of left my father, who I was very close with. You know, he just lost his life partner, of course, my poor mother. And then I was going to Madrid. So that was hard in itself because, you know, the son's going. And then, you know, my final year at Liverpool was hard because I was leaving Liverpool, and effectively I was leaving Liverpool on a free contract, which wasn't known back then. And, you know, there was lots of bits in the paper saying Liverpool had offered me X amount of money, which was an obscene amount of money. And so there was a lot of pressure there locally because people thought I was earning, you know, there was a load of stories in the newspapers and on radios, which of course were plainly untrue. But nobody knew the story. It was just conjecture. It was just rumour. So the rumours were rife because I was one of the first people to actually leave Liverpool and leave on a free contract. And then, of course, I was going to Real Madrid, which they just won the Champions League the year before. They were a big team. So to leave and go to a team like that, again, there's more pressure. I didn't know the language. I started learning Italian, and then I switched because I thought I was going to go and play in Italy. And then I switched and started learning Spanish. So to get into that rigmarole and then get over there. And then, your first day at work, I just walked into this dressing room and I was like, trying to speak pidgin Spanish to everybody. And then the first afternoon, we went on to pre-season tour to Austria or Switzerland, in the mountains in the middle of nowhere for 2 weeks. I got stuck with a Spanish lad who was great, but of course we couldn't converse. I've just got this little face saying, I like apples and stuff. And then, but I used to sit there when the lads went for a beer, not understanding a word they said, but, have a beer and laugh and smile. So it was really, initially it was really hard and very lonely, but I knew it was going to be like that. So there was, it wasn't a case of, oh my God, I didn't know it was going to be like this. I can't believe it was like this. I knew it was going to be like this. I knew it was going to be hard to break in, but you have to train and you have to play. And as soon as you play, they look at you and they think, actually, this geezer's all right. He's a nice lad. And then you play football and you go, oh, and he can play football as well. And then it just goes from there. But, it's the same now. You get a new lad comes in with a big reputation. You watch him on the training ground. If he's good and he's one of the lads and he has a laugh and a joke, and then you suddenly see he's a good footballer, you think, oh, this is going to be fine. It won't be a problem at all.
You seen that Ian Rush obviously went to Juventus. Did that play in your mind? Because obviously it wasn't really as successful as he would have wanted anyway. Spell over there, and then he came back quite shortly. Was that on your mind when you were going over?
Definitely. Right, I spoke to Rushy. I spoke to David Platt. They were in Italy, as you rightly said. I spoke to Johnny Barnes, who, of course, wanted to go to abroad and probably would have gone abroad, only he snapped his Achilles playing for England that time. Mm. So I spoke to all of these people about it, just to get a picture, because, as I said, I started learning Italian because I thought I was going to go to Juventus in something like the November, the December. But Liverpool and Gerard Houllier said, no, we want to keep him to the end of the season because, the money wasn't a big issue then. So I asked them all about it, all about Turin, all about these various cities. And I was still going to go, no matter if they said I hated it or whatever. It was in my mind. I didn't want to play in the Premier League. I wanted to go and test myself, rightly or wrongly. If I would have come back a year later, hating it, fine. But I did want to actually go and leave the country and try a new language and live a new culture and try a new lifestyle.
You got to Madrid, obviously, and it was like the Harlem Globetrotters that time. They were unbelievable, right? So see, when you got there, who was it you clicked with instantly? Because there's obviously someone, I know you said about the language barrier and stuff. Yeah. But was there someone that you clicked with straight away?
Well, there was a couple of players who spoke English at the time come to help me out, and it was Christian Carambou, who actually stayed at Madrid for a number of years after that, and Clarence Seedorf, he spoke English, but Clarence left after about a month before the transfer window, went to play in Italy. Nicholas Anelka was brought in as well. He spoke English, but Nicholas was very quiet. So it would have been someone like Christian Carambou at the time. We bought a lad at the same time as me called Jeremy. He was from Cameroon. I think we brought him in from Turkey. Eventually played for Middlesbrough, Chelsea in England. He was a lovely lad and spoke English. So he was a really bubbly character. And because we were sort of newbies, I spoke to him a lot. And then it was just, you learn the language as quickly as possible. You get a book, you do your homework, you sit on a plane coming home from an away game, and you get your book out and you start trying to learn your verbs and all that. So it's just the same old, it's just back to the schoolwork again.
What were the big players at the time? Like all the big name players? What were they like?
The big name players at the time when I joined would have been Roberto Carlos was there in 99. I mean, they just won the Champions League in 98. So it would have been Morientes was there as a youngster. Mijatovic, who scored the goal, left the year I came. Davos Suko left the year I came, as in the summer. I exchanged with them. But it would have been Roberto Carlos. It would have been Morientes, Fernando Hierro, who was a superstar, Manolo Sanchez, Raul, of course, the Spanish centre forward. Would have been those type of players.
See, when you were obviously training at Liverpool, you've left Liverpool, a massive club, went to another massive club in Madrid. Did you notice a difference in the training standard, the quality in that, in the rondos, to say?
No, it's exactly the same, mate, and I'll tell you why. Because when I got there, I signed under Gus Hiddink, and by the time I got there, he'd been sacked because they finished second in the league. And when I got there, John Toshak was Liverpool manager, and of course, he was an ex-Liverpool player. So he did all the same exercises that he learned at Melwood, from Roy Evans and Ronnie Moran. So every exercise we did, I'd already done it the year before with exactly the same exercises.
So you settled in easy then.
That's easy. I knew all the exercises before the Spanish players.
That's madness. That must have been. But see, when you first went over, you must have got homesick. Was not knowing obviously how to speak a word of English. They're all speaking to each other in Spanish. And it's the first time you've sort of left the country. That must have been because I mean I went over to Liverpool from Belfast at 16, was crying my eyes out like so.
You were crying your eyes out 2 weeks ago, having to leave it.
Yeah, Liverpool or Belfast and Morecambe's there. Let's tell you what, there's a sea up here, so you might as well be abroad.
Ryan literally is an honorary Scouser now. Like, how long were you there? 10 years or something?
Where are you staying now? Are you still in Liverpool and travelling to Morecambe, or have you got a place in Morecambe?
I don't know if I should say where
Back
I'm staying
home.
here because I'm in a hotel in Chorley at the minute until I get the spot.
He's moving close to Old Trafford.
Places, mate. I love it. All the glamour. That's the
Surely you've got a bedroom in your east wing of your mansion I can just slam into.
I've got plenty of bedrooms, mate. Whatever way you want.
Hopefully I will be moving back. I'm moving in hopefully in the next few weeks into summer, but I'll be somewhere in the northwest close to Liverpool because of this is going to turn into my podcast. Folks, we're talking about Matt here. We'll speak about this after.
No. No. Is there a sense though of suppose you were already so successful, obviously in England, but getting into a team like Colin said, full of these superstars, is there a sense of imposter syndrome at all, or do you have to just sort of completely believe in yourself?
No, because when I arrived, they hadn't won anything, to be honest, and it was a bit of a culture shock because they normally won something every year. They finished second in the league and I think lost in the semi-finals of the Champions League. I may be wrong with that. And there was a big turnaround of players. A lot of players left. A lot of big, high-profile players. As I said, Mijatovic left, Davor Suker left, Christian Panucci left, Kladen Seedorf left, and a number of players came in. So there was talk. I don't know because didn't know these players personally at the time, but there was talk about they needed to get a lot of these people out of the door. They were going out with local personalities. There was a lot of nonsense around the club. They needed to clear a few out. So when I arrived, it was almost like a clean slate for the whole team. And it was a case of, right, let's start again. We didn't start great. And, John Toshak was a very vociferous manager who used to argue a lot with the press and things like that. And he was sacked after about 3 or 4 months. And then Vicente Del Bosque came in and he's like the calmest man in the world, doesn't say much. He's got a long history with Real Madrid as a player, as an academy coach, came right through the ranks, and he restored like this calm throughout the team. And then we went, I don't know whether you remember, we went to Brazil, like when Manchester United opted out of the FA Cup that time. We did exactly the same in Spain, and we had to go to Brazil just in January, February and play in that silly tournament that was made up, the Club World Trophy or whatever it was back then. We played and then came back. And when we came back, we were way down the league. We had about 5 games in hands because we'd been away that much. And then we just started to click football wise. We went to 5 at the back. We didn't have star names in the team, but we started to click and play really well. And then when the Champions League resumed, I think we beat United. I think we beat Bayern Munich. And Bayern Munich had stuffed us good style in the group stages twice. And we beat them in the semi-finals. And then when we rolled on to the final, we were in a really, really good place then at the end of the season. We really peaked towards the end of the season, which helped us.
Yeah. What was it like winning that Champions League, that first one? You ever just go in and grab your medal and just look in the mirror and be like,
these are like a fella comes up to you in the toilet in the middle of a night out and just asks these questions.
Kieran, not me. Don't be calling us both.
So you speak about the Champions League. I ain't around my neck all the time. No, just it was Kieran. It was brilliant. I had my father and all his family. It was in Paris. It was close for them. I had about 18, 19 friends with me. All came over. All my pals came. The game went as well as it could be expected. We were always going to win. We were always leading. We were never really in doubt. So it was a brilliant occasion, mate. Really, really good. Fantastic. Yeah.
Is that the best moment of your career?
Yeah, because we all consider now, everybody considers this, the Champions League is the be all and end all, don't we? That seems to be the biggest trophy now and the best thing to win. I won the FA Cup for Liverpool when I was 20. That was huge for me at the time because 6 years prior, I went to Wembley. No, 8 years prior, 84. I went to Wembley with my father to watch Everton beat Watford. You know, I was 12 then, and I was thinking, you think to yourself, wow, Wembley, this is just an incredible place. You come here to watch your team play in the final. And then 8 years later, I was walking up the stairs myself to get it. So that was an amazing, I wouldn't say trophy for trophy. Of course, we consider that the Champions League better, but winning the FA Cup with Liverpool as a 20-year-old was amazing. Because I remember when we won the Champions League, because I'd only been at the club 8, 9, 10 months, going back into the dressing room, they're all singing songs in Spanish and they're all bouncing around, and it's great. And I'm joining in, but I'm always on the periphery. I always feel a bit of a fraud because I don't really know the words to the song. So I'm jumping, and I just think if it would have been in the Anfield dressing room, it would have just been a more enjoyable occasion. Mm. So that's why, the 92 Cup final was just as important for me, and it was my first, so that was special.
Yeah, see, you've obviously always have a close affiliation now with like the City of Madrid and the Real Madrid supporters. They obviously took you, like, you're probably the most successful Englishman anyway to go over to obviously Europe and play abroad and do so well. Now you see all the young players doing it now. Did David Beckham, would he have contacted you before he went over? Because
no, Beck's never, and funny enough, Michael didn't either, which surprised me because of course I was Michael's teammate for many a year, so he never contacted me either to ask me about the club. But some people must feel like they don't need to. I don't know whether it's paranoid. Yeah, I don't, exactly. It's brilliant. Because Michael only stayed a year, didn't he? But or less than a year. Jonathan Woodgate came over as well. Woody never contacted me, but of course I wouldn't necessarily expect him. But no, nobody did contact me about it.
Yeah. See, once you go back over, do you still have that? Do you still get like adored from Madrid fans? Because I remember, like, I was talking to you before you came online, Mac, and I just remember like watching the Madrid United game at Old Trafford with my dad, and I was always like, because I was obviously quite young still, I was always like sort of taken aback from an Englishman playing for Real Madrid, and obviously you done brilliant that game. I think Ronaldo's hat-trick overshadowed your performance personally, because but I remember him saying to me, my dad saying to me, like, how of a brilliant career you've had before that, and I was sort of like always taken aback. Do you think, because you're doing so well, do you think that sort of led for a path of the youngsters now going over?
No, I don't think so, to be honest, because there's not that many. I think the path to Germany is different.
Yeah,
I feel like Germany is an option to go play and get back to England for the bigger teams, doesn't it? There's a path there, like in Dortmund.
Not many go to Madrid or anyone.
Yeah, so I mean, there's a couple. Musiala's at Bayern, but of course his upbringing is different. No, I mean, I don't necessarily think that people need to go to foreign teams, to be honest, mate, because the English Premier League is the best league around. It's more professional than every league. You get paid on time to a certain extent, looking at the finances. The training grounds and everything and the stadiums are better as a whole in the Premier League than anything. So people now, if people were to go over and if they're married and they've got young children, that's even harder. I didn't at the time, so it was probably easy for me. But I think if you've got young kids and they're in a good school, sometimes the last thing on your mind is to uproot and go to a different country and find, if your wife doesn't like it, it's a problem. If the kids don't like it and learn the language, it's a problem, especially when everything in England is set up for you. Your family's here, your grandparents are here to help. So each to their own at the moment. But it was just different for me. My wife now and my girlfriend at the time, she just qualified as a barrister. So she was ready to go. I was ready to go. So it worked perfectly for us. She'd lived in Germany prior to that. So she knew what it was like to live abroad and know what it was like and learn languages. So it just worked well for us at that particular time. But it wouldn't work well for a lot of people.
Yeah. Well, tell me this, Steve. Like, fast forward a few years, you finish your career at City. Obviously, a lot of athletes that operate at your level, especially at the very, very top, they find it very hard to give up sport. They end up with problems outside of the sport and so on and so forth. Did you find it very hard to sort of say, right, my time is up?
No, I found it easy, actually, Kieran. And it was only because I had injuries, that's all. Because I stopped when I was 33. And ideally, you don't want to stop playing football when you're 33. But my couple of years at City was hampered by really muscular injuries, but particularly I had Achilles problems injury. And I think because of my Achilles problems injuries, and I was trying to overcompensate for them, I started getting hamstring injuries and calf injuries. And I never had a muscular injury all my entire life. But I probably needed an operation on my both Achilles tendons. And that's a big operation, that. And the last thing I wanted to do was leave City, join another team, and then get operated on and be out for another year. So I was more than happy just to say, right, I don't want to carry on anymore. I just, if anything, I didn't say anything. I just got to the end of the season and stopped playing. And I never really told anyone I was retiring, but I knew that I just didn't want to carry on. I was in too much pain. I'd wake up in the morning and hobble around for 2 hours. If I was ever to train, I have to stand in a hot bath for a while. And it just wasn't enjoyable. I wasn't playing great football. It's not fair on anybody else. I was miserable at home because I was limping everywhere. So it was quite easy to say, you know what, I'm stopping. And, I'll just crack on with other things, really.
Mm-hmm. In 2013, then, Brendan Rodgers came out and said you'd be a part of the academy at Liverpool. Obviously, you ran into young Beckham here.
Best in your life, Mac.
So, see, whenever you were in that role, obviously at the academy, did you think about full-time management?
I thought about football management, Colin, when I finished playing initially, when I first finished it, because I think in 2005 it was a different job to what it is now. I always wanted to go in it. I took my badges, but then the way football evolved and the way managers were treated, I just fell out of love with it a bit. I initially finished, and then I went traveling with with my wife, and then I started having children. I had children like when I finished playing football. I was late. I was 35, I think, when I had my first child. So the children became a priority, and then spending time with them. And then managers were starting to get sacked after 5 minutes if you lose 3 or 4 games. And I just thought, do I want to get into this lifestyle where I'm going to be away from the kids all the time? I've been away from my wife all the time by playing football, and I'll be away in different hotels 3 or 4 nights a week. And I thought, if I was to manage a team, and it was, say, if I had to manage a team down south, do you move the family down, or do you leave them at home and be away from them? And then if you get sacked after 10 minutes, do you then move back and move the kids as well? And I just thought it wasn't the right environment for me. And then subsequently, a man called Andrew Hornet, Buzz Hornet, approached me about being like a pundit on the telly for the Irish channel at the time, Setanta. And he said, they're bringing it to England. Would you like to do it? I've got Les Ferdinand and Tim Sherwood. And of course, they were really good lads. And it was, we had a really good group of people. And he said, just try it out. And I started it. And I had such a good time, and it meant me being in the house, all week, of course, and then going to football matches on a Saturday with a great group of lads, having a drink before the game, depending on what time it was, having a drink the night after, depending on when the game was placed. And it just became, that way. So so in 2013, to answer your question, no, I was set on not being a manager in 2013. But when I originally retired in 2005, I thought it was something that I wanted to do.
Do you see yourself continue with the media work? Because you see a lot of pundits now, like yourself, the likes of Gary Neville as well. They're saying that like they don't want to go. Like obviously he's had his touch of management and he hated it, dreaded it.
I wonder why.
You're still the most successful Englishman to go for the Spain market.
That's my good friend Gary. Let's not talk about him like that.
Gary follows Callum on Twitter. So Callum says him a happy birthday once a year. That's their only.
Yeah, that's our only interaction.
Stay in with him, Callum. He's influential.
Yeah, but like, do you think more and more sort of going down that punditry route? Because, like you said yourself, like managers just getting absolute, and they're actually threatening sort of on ruining their reputation a little bit. I think with the club, like obviously the Chelsea fans love Frank Lampard, but he ended up getting sacked. But that could have went horribly wrong, where they could, like a set of fans could forget about what you've done for them as a player, and sometimes I'm sure that'll be in the back of their heads. And does that sort of now when you're in the punditry work, I'm sure that there's really enjoyable and you're sort of just thinking it's a bit more relaxed, but you can still enjoy the football side of things and the banter with the lads in the studio as well.
I certainly think so. I mean, you were the one who mentioned Frank just then, but you take Frank, for instance. He managed Chelsea for a year when they couldn't sign anybody. Had to play a load of kids, got them into the Champions League. Amazing. You know, it was COVID. The league started in September again. He brought a few players in, as we know. In January, he was sacked. In January, from September to January, that's all he had. Yeah, admittedly, he'd lost a few games, but he qualifies in the Champions League. They just beat Luton, I think it was, in the FA Cup. And then they sacked him. I mean, he's the one player, or the one person who loved Chelsea more than Sarri, Conte, Rafa, everybody. Yet they treated him the worst. 5 months they give him.
It's mad.
I mean, so, you know, I think you answer your own question by that. You know, you get treated like that, and you think to yourself, well, you know, what is the point?
Yeah.
You know, and then what's he going to do? Manage somebody else, and after 4 or 5 games, you lose a few games, and you're just out again. It's just a really hard job now. It's ruthless.
So if Everton came knocking,
what's that, mate?
If Everton came knocking and said to you, Steve, we've got your perfect role here, will you take it? Would you say no genuinely?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, of course, mate. You'd want better quality and better experienced managers than me, of course, because I haven't done it and I'm nearly 50. So that's not realistic. But I just think, you know, would you like to do it, Ryan, when you finish?
No.
I think simplistically, it's a great job. You think, oh, if I could get it right, if I could be a success, this is going to be amazing. But you can't go into a job and then the chairman go, we're struggling. We want you to come in and help us. Yeah, we haven't got any money. And actually, we haven't got anything else. And, you know, and you're like, well, where's my help? You're just supposed to magic yourself, make these players, 10 times better than they are and what they've shown. It's really, really difficult now. So you need a willing chairman who will support you through the bad times, because you're only getting hired because there's bad times. Mm-hmm. So you need that. You need financial support. And I just think it's a really difficult job now, really difficult. The team wins, the players get all the credit. The team loses, the manager gets all the stick. It's just the wrong way around nowadays.
I think it says it all when Carragher, who everyone thought went into management, like he was literally like he's perfect for it. You would have thought, when he was playing at the end of his career, and like he's completely went the other way, like you have, and like Gary Neville has, etc. And he seems to love the punditry. I think pundits seem so much like ex-players who are pundits seem so much more happier in life than when you look at them.
It looks way better crack. It does look way better crack. Like.
Keen it is, I went down to Chelsea at the weekend. You with all the lads, you'd have a drink, you'd have a laugh. Of course, you do the game, but you socially you see each other, and it's relaxing. You just have a chat about football like you used to do, or if you have a chat about boxing, you all have different opinions. You're speaking to Joe Cole, who loves Chelsea, Rio, of course, he loves Man U. You have a laugh and a joke with them all, but in the end, we're all good mates, and then we all clear off and meet up again, in a few days' time.
Are you doing the United match?
The job has changed anyway. The job has changed. That's the thing.
Yeah.
It's not the same job it was 10, 15 years ago, was it?
No.
Are you doing the United match during the week this week on BT, or what match are you on?
No, mate, no. I'm doing Liverpool, Porto tomorrow, and then Benfica, Barcelona. I don't know who's doing Man United. I mean, Rio's there, Owen Hargreaves is there, or Scholesy's there, I think. I think Robbie Savage is commentating, I think.
Mac, I see before we let you go, I think I've asked you this when you were actually taking us for training in that at the academy, but I sort of want to know now, like for obviously the people listening, see, obviously you played with Ronaldo, the Brazilian Ronaldo. See, in terms of talent and ability, see him compared to Cristiano Ronaldo and Messi. How far do you think he surpasses them? And obviously had the injuries, or do you think the likes of Messi best player ever?
It's different. The Ronnie, when he joined us, was heavily injured. If you looked at his knees, mate, when he joined us, I think he joined when he was about 27. His knees were scars on because he's had ACL injuries and things like that.
Yeah.
And he was amazing. He was amazing then. So I can't comment. When I speak to, we had a player at Real Madrid called Albert Thalades, who's managed under 21s, Spanish under 21s, and he was at Barcelona with Ronaldo in his pomp, and he said he was the greatest thing you've ever seen. He said you couldn't get the ball off him at training. You just get it and take everybody on a score. And that's a bit like Messi now. That's the stories I've heard of him, off a lot of the Spanish players. So he certainly would have been, the fact that he scored so many goals in the World Cup, his records is, phenomenal. People still say he's the best now, but he's like a mythical character now, isn't he? You know what he's like? He's the president of Real Valladolid. They won yesterday, so I was speaking to him.
Do you fancy Bam Morecambe?
You're going to be my right back. That's the thing.
And you'll have me shipped off.
Oh, no. I'll put you centre midfielder, mate. You're captain. Don't worry about that.
Steve, before we let you go, right? Obviously, we're a boxing podcast. Did you watch the fight at the weekend? Are you interested in boxing?
Of course, I watched the fight at the weekend. Yes.
Yeah. What did you think of it?
I thought it was really disappointing. Wasn't it? I thought Usyk was excellent, but Usyk, I think, did what we all expected him to do. He was a southpaw. He moved. He was lighter on his feet, of course, because he's been a cruiserweight. He knew what to do. He knew how to cause Anthony Joshua problems. And he took centre of the ring, Anthony Joshua, and couldn't get anywhere near him. I wanted him to be a bit more aggressive. He wasn't. I wanted him to use his weight. He didn't. And by the time he needed to, he was 4 or 5 rounds down. So it was all a little bit... I know, and weirdly, because I'm a professional, I've been a professional footballer, I was astounded by his walking, where he's high-fiving and kissing people and standing there with AJ going off and all these pyrotechnics. I thought, if he looks as if he wants to fight, that's the worst acting I've seen. He's dancing around, and I just thought to myself, how strange is that? But I mean, I presume that's just the show nowadays, isn't it? But I was from the walk into the end of the fight, I was just left scratching my head by the performance of it all, because Usyk didn't do anything that we thought he would do. He did exactly what we thought he would do. But it just turns out that he's amazing, isn't it, Usyk? I mean, I think that's it.
I was pretty much spot on. Like, that's what we thought as well. And the walk-in, I've heard a lot of people say that now as well. Like, it was weird, because I've seen AJ.
What do you think? Because, I mean, I think as a professional, you'd be so focused that I wouldn't want to see anybody. You walk out and you're ready, especially boxing. It's different than football. Boxing, you're out one-on-one, and you need to beat this person up. So what do you think as
I agree. Like, the weird thing is AJ usually is completely zoned in. Like, I'd never seen him like that before. It was bizarre. I don't know if he was just trying to take in the moment, or
I think it was the nerves.
I said to my teammates today, I was like, lads, I was more zoned in and a bit more nervous for the Lancashire derby at the weekend between Morecambe than he was the Usyk and 70,000.
I expect that, mate. If you played Man United or you played Everton, there's no way you're going to be speaking. You wouldn't speak to them, even though you played for England with them, and they wouldn't speak to you. It was just part of your mindset that I'm not going to show them any weakness. I'm just going to be.
Gary Neville didn't even speak to his brother. Like,
no, but that's completely right. And when we see Brazilians in opposite teams hugging each other, we all think that's terrible, but that's just part of their nature. In England, we're like, right, we are not speaking to him, and we are going to kick lumps out of him and win this game, and then we'll speak to them. But that's what surprised me. As I said, I mentioned it to someone, and they said, AJ did that against Klitschko and he won. So I thought, it must be like a routine. But then I thought to myself, I don't think he did it against Ruiz, either time.
Probably not.
And I just thought it was a weird old thing, but it is what it is. If he won the fight, we'd probably say, it was great. And we've seen people get carried in, like Prince Nassim back in the day, and of course Tyson Fury, as strange walk-ins. But I still like, the original Mike Tyson's walk-in, where he just
no music.
He was almost running to the ring, wasn't he? And he teared off his towel over his hoodie, whatever, and you just thought to yourself, well, he's not going to lose this fight. I just thought there was a number of things, but again, what do I know? I'm only an amateur watcher. That's the great thing about it. That's what people talk about football about, and I can talk about that at boxing.
100%. Well, Steve, thank you so much for coming on the 50th special.
Yep.
I'm glad the man himself, so we're buzzing you came on, mate.
Thanks a million, Steve. Really appreciate it.
Very much.
And Steve, well, I'm really looking forward to our trip to Madrid. Just make sure you bring them Champions League medals.
I might be there.
Well, folks, that's it for our episode with Steve McManaman. Join us again next week, and we'll be back with another very special guest. Also, another big thank you goes to Wow Hydrate, who have came on board as a new sponsor for us as well. So why not push it and check out their website for some great deals.
My dad likes to call that life. but I'd like to call that white girl problem. Met her back in autumn. Every gift I try to get her, she already got them. Messing with the TA, wonder what she taught him. Work her way down, literally to the bottom. Where are all my best friends? How can I ignore them? Never gonna